you walk in. I don't know if you're a rapper or whatever. You got a little bit of your hat. I don't know.
Okay, all right, we're back.
Some Eminem on me here.
All right, we're back here with the Breath of Fresh Controversy podcast. My name is Zach. We're here with Jay, Sarah, and ZP again.
Hello.
So we are going to be talking about the issue of healthcare right now. So tune in here and let's get some different perspectives on this. Sarah, if you want to start us off.
Yeah.
Healthcare
Okay.
topic.
So I will start off with healthcare. I'm going to say it one more time. I worked in a nursing home for a few years, and I am very jaded from it. But no, I saw a lot, and I've definitely worked in the medical field for many years. I was a medical assistant for a while. I did therapy, and I was going to be a nurse at one point. Didn't go that route. So anyhow, I have some very strong opinions when it comes to healthcare. And there are a lot of aspects that go into it. There's the lack of healthcare in the United States. There is the prescribing of pharmaceuticals. There's the expenses that go into everything healthcare related, whether it be medications or getting the help, going to the hospital. So there are a lot of topics that we can branch off from this.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then what you had mentioned in the earlier is the more holistic approach to healthcare and how we have it's becoming more popular, I feel, in the past few years. Like, a more holistic approach to healthcare has been a really big push from, like, the younger generation. I would say a lot of the millennials are hopping on board with that. But we still are sitting in this world where prescription drugs are the kings and big pharmacology.
Pharmacology.
Sure. Yeah, I'm just going to stick with it.
Sounds like a bigger word. Yeah. Big Pharma is the short way. Yeah.
Pushing a lot of things, and I feel like they're in the pockets of a lot of other people. So yeah, there's a lot that we could say about this one.
Absolutely. Yeah, one time I'll just share with you real quickly. I actually saw this happen. So I was with a relative at a hospital, and the relative was going to the doctor. And there's this guy, he walks in, and he's got a three-piece suit on, and he's got the hair all slicked back, and he's got this briefcase, and, he's got the whole look, and he looks good, and he says something to one of the nurses or the receptionist nurse or something, and she says something back to him, and then, I don't know if she got up and walked away or got some coffee or something, and he just walks, like, right past, like, breaking protocol. Like, he really needed to wait his turn, and he goes right to this doctor's office. And then this lady came back, and she's like, hey, where was that guy? Oh, he's not supposed to do that, And here he was. He was from a drug company, and he was visiting with a doctor. I don't know, probably trying to sell something or giving some free samples or something. And, I don't know if it was all bad what the guy was doing, but wow, it was, I actually saw this, so just anecdotally, but it was like, oh, this is interesting. A pushy, big pharma salesman, wow, he just walked right in there. And so, anyway, it was kind of interesting, but yeah, we don't have to get, too political, and yet so much healthcare is talked about. I think no matter where anybody's at politically, I think everybody's got to agree healthcare is too expensive. It's insane. And these politicians, if they really care, or anybody who cares about the issue, they really need to dive in. Like, why is it so expensive? And there's different reasons. And anybody has some thoughts here today about that, I would, love to hear them, and I'd love to throw them out there. But I think everybody agrees, no matter what you call yourself, Democrat, Republican, Independent, healthcare costs are insane.
They are absolutely insane. Unless you're poor, then it's free, which really frustrates me.
Yeah.
It's free for them, not for everyone else.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, okay, so I have a perspective, and I feel like I may have spoken about this on the podcast before. But so a little background with me. I have a daughter. I had her. I was 22. I didn't have a career. I waitressed a few days a week. So you get Medicaid, or is it Medicaid? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was enrolled in that, and I was like, this is great. Like, I have this insurance that I don't ever see a bill. Everything is taken care of. But I also know that I was taught to work hard and to stand on my own 2 feet and not have the government support me, right? So I went to school and did that whole thing. got a big girl job. That's why I call it my big girl job, because it had insurance with it. So if it has insurance, you're working a big girl job. And that I realized that how can I afford to live as middle class when I would be better off waitressing 3 days a week and getting my insurance paid for? But instead, I'm basically working for my insurance and making the same amount of money. So it's a pretty flawed system. And they were talking for a while about doing Medicare for all, which would be pretty much everyone has insurance, and it's looked at similar to Medicare. And Medicare has a lot of rules and things that you need to follow, so it gets a little complex. But it's a good concept in my mind to get everyone having insurance. Because what do? I walk into a hospital, I probably shouldn't admit this, but I've had to go to the emergency room. I got a bill in the mail. I was like, I can't afford to pay this, so I didn't pay it. Mm-hmm. But it's like, why can't we do something to support, to get people to be able to get the health care that they need, to be able to afford it, and not like have this huge gap? Because there's a gap right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's definitely a genuine gap, too, between... so not every job provides insurance, even jobs that are 40 hours or more.
Sure.
Right?
Big girl jobs without insurance.
Right. They definitely exist out there. Right. And this is something that we see particularly kind of with Obamacare. There's a gap that exists between Medicaid and when you are actually eligible to buy insurance off of the
marketplace.
Off of the marketplace, thank you. Right? So if you make more than a certain amount of money, you are ineligible for Medicaid. But if you don't make enough money, then you can't afford any of the stuff on the marketplace.
Correct.
Right? So there's a genuine gap that exists in our Medicare system right now that is leaving a huge portion of our population just without insurance. Mm-hmm. And our medical bills as a country are astronomical because Medicaid isn't free, right? It's free for the person who's taking it. Everyone who pays their taxes pays for that, right? And our insurance costs and our medical costs as a country are skyrocketing because of the gap that exists there in the Obamacare system and because of what Medicaid does, right? Because it does incentivize people to stay there, right? It does incentivize people to stay on a system that's free, seeming for them, right? Because people who qualify for Medicaid often are also the ones who are paying the least amount in taxes, right? Mm-hmm. And they're not being charged nearly as much as everyone else is, right? And so now that you have your big girl job, you're paying that back, so to speak. But
yeah, I'm doing my part. Thank you, everybody who helped me out along the way.
There's a really good book I read in college by David K. Shipler called "The Working Poor: Invisible in America," that really talks about this realm between like those in poverty, those that qualify for all these different government benefits, right? Not just on the healthcare issue, but like food stamps, all of it, right? Mm-hmm. Everyone that kind of qualifies for that. And when you're just past that, and it becomes basically a cycle where you get these benefits, you're able to get out of poverty, right? Or and it probably something exists like this between the working class and the middle class as well, where you're able to get up, right, work your way there, and then once you're there, now you have to pay more in taxes, or these benefits are taken away, and then you end up right back where you were. Mm-hmm. And now the burden becomes too much, and then you dive back down either from the middle class to the working class, or the working class to poverty, and then you're back on the government system until you can take care of yourself enough to get out, and then it just becomes this cycle of you're never really able to escape.
Well, I'm glad I broke out of the cycle.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I think about it sometimes, though, that maybe I should go back. But no.
So it's there are a lot of issues with the healthcare stuff, and I do think it stems from the pricing. I think it has a lot to do with the insurance companies.
Yeah.
Right. Definitely in bed with the government, and this is where all the right wing conservative types are gonna be like, less government, and I'm like, yeah, totally with you. It's like too much government corruption and power and everything has just led to these lobbyists paying them off to sign all these bills so that we all have to pay them astronomical amounts to take care of our kids and take care of ourselves. And it's shitty. It's shitty. We live in a day and age where everything's progressing so well, and our tax rates are insane. Income tax is something like 30% for most people. That's nuts. 30 cents on every dollar you make goes to the government. For what? For what? What do we get for that?
For some, it's even more than that if you add in everything.
Yeah.
All the sales
I'm just saying
taxes.
that. Yeah, just income tax.
Okay.
Just income tax
Okay,
is like
okay.
30%
Okay.
for most people. That's nuts. You're not getting a sizable fraction of that back when you get a tax refund. Okay, like they are just taking your money and using it for whatever the hell they want, and most of it's not going into these programs that we've talked about, the beneficial programs.
Right.
This is where I like certain progressives. I like people on the left side of the aisle who are really about, hey, we have all this money here, and none of us are. This is not helping the middle class, the working class, and those in poverty, right? This is, it is helping some people in poverty, but it's not helping who it should. And it's creating these perpetual systems where the government's corrupt and profiting, and these corporations are profiting off of everybody in these sort of cycles and systems. And it's like, well, let's break the cycle. Let's make this a fair game. Let's make it a fair game. Yeah.
But I often think that the government wants you to depend on them. Like, there's a reason that they do all of this.
Oh yeah. Oh, definitely. They definitely want to make you feel like you need them.
Right.
So that's why they are able to live like kings. They make almost a $200,000 salary. All the congressmen.
Well, 174,000. They're looking for a raise.
And they have all the benefits.
That doesn't include all the perks, including free healthcare. That's all the wacky parts. The healthcare the Congress gets.
A better version of Medicare.
Oh God, it is just crazy.
It's insane.
It is just crazy. So, and I want to bring up holistic healing a little bit. I'm no expert on that. A lot of people think it's quackery, and everybody's fine to have their opinion. But I really think, for some things, people can go to your local health food store, talk to somebody there, and you can tell pretty fast if somebody's just working a job or someone's been in and working at the health food store for many years and they know their stuff. And, you could try things and try things out. And, you may find something that can be an alternative to a prescribed pharmaceutical, but it's kind of a vague and dangerous potential area. So
because there's no money that funds it, nobody puts money towards holistic alternatives. Like even vitamins, those aren't FDA approved, or there's no regulations for them.
Yeah.
Which, once your government gets their hand in it, it usually turns into a different story.
Right.
Yeah.
But
you need to be 18 or older to purchase vitamin C.
Yeah, right.
Like, what?
What the hell?
Hold on.
But there's, in Eastern medicine, they've been practicing these things for years, and they still practice them. As far as acupuncture, or even breathing. You can breathe to make your mental health better, or doing yoga and stuff like that. But that's not where the push is. The push is for pharmaceuticals.
Right.
And something, there's an Eastern practice that I love. Okay. It's this goes back to ancient times. This is a practice with their medicine, is that a doctor doesn't get paid until the patient is cured.
That's amazing.
And wouldn't that be amazing if we did that here? Obviously, I think there's two. This is where capitalism, the greedy side of capitalism. This is where it's like. This is where I do disagree with some of my free market friends. This is where if you tried to take that philosophy and apply it to the market now, they'd be like, hell no. Mm-hmm. No. We want our money. Sorry. Too bad.
There was
That's
a
nice
quote
thought.
that
Nice
I
dream.
read, and it said, mainstream doctors are simply sales reps in white coats. Pushers for a cartel whose profits depend on sick people.
Ooh.
Loaded, right?
That's something that I've tried to tell people that a lot over the last couple of years here. It's like the more you dive into it, the more
He's got something.
The more you dive into it, the more you see that. Put yourselves in their shoes, right? Like, you want to say, oh, these doctors are terrible. These doctors are terrible people, and they're selling these drugs and everything. It's like, well, they went to school for 8 years. Okay, it's very difficult to go to school for 8 years and become a doctor. Okay, they're coming out of school with something like $200,000, $120K, $240 in debt. That's before interest kicks in. Okay, and then they're expected to work 72-hour weeks. right? Demanded of them, right? So these people probably just want a break, all right? And when you get that guy coming in with the suit and they're all dressed up to the nines and in his suitcase, and he's going to be like, we'll give you a $30,000 check right now to say you're one of the 9 out of 10 doctors who recommends our drug. Okay, you're going to start selling this instead of the other guy, right? Et cetera,
Or
et
we'll
cetera.
take you out for dinner
You know,
and get you prostitutes.
And-
I feel like they
and
do that one too.
well, they'll do, yeah, right. Well, yeah.
Oh,
You know,
wow. Okay.
I knew a drug rapping. I've
wow.
heard
In some
stories.
cases, yeah. In some cases, yeah. Dinner and
Wow.
prostitutes is a
Yeah.
lot cheaper than a $30,000 check.
Yeah.
So or whatever.
And
right?
there's no
So-
record of it.
Sure, exactly. So, and put yourself in their shoes, right? You got $240,000 in debt. You're working yourself to the bone, just to pay the bills and to save up a little bit.
And the doctors also have to take out incredible insurance policies
Yeah,
for malpractice
yeah.
suits.
Right,
So
right.
you have- yeah.
So it's like, even if you're a doctor and you're making all this money, it's going to be like 10 years, right? If you're like the most moral doctor in the world, it's going to be like 10 years before you're like finally starting to build your nest egg, right? Before you're like debt free and you're finally on your way, like you made it. And it's like, how old would you be? 8 years out of college? Let's say you went to school right away, you graduated at 26. 10 years after that, you're 36 years old and you're finally starting to save something.
Yeah, that doesn't sound so bad.
You know what I'm saying? Like, if people look at doctors and they're like, oh, they got it all together. It's like,
Right, no, I
well,
understand.
that's a lot of work, right? That's 18 years of your life, to get somewhere, to finally get somewhere, it's a lot of sacrifice. So, yes, everybody in their shoes would be more apt to go, I will definitely take the dinner and the prostitutes and that $30,000 check to sell your stupid drug, right? And I'll take the next five. Come on in.
Yeah.
Come on in, right? Pay off my student loans faster
Yeah.
so I can go to Jamaica and take some time
God.
off, right? So, and that's where you get all this malpractice and everything. But it's like, I don't know. How do you fix that, right?
Right.
How do you fix that?
Something.
Education
Yeah.
costs? I mean,
Change in education.
I don't know.
Something that I don't know if I listened to or I had read it, but it was discussing how making doctors more having them have more empathy towards their patients. Because when they originally started training doctors, they would look at their math and science scores, and they would be more likely to accept them into their college. Because if you're good at math and science, you're going to be good with the human body and whatever.
Right.
And now they've been gearing it more towards,
English and history.
What's that?
English and history are the top things I look at now.
Is that what it is? Yeah. But whatever it is, to make them a doctor that's going to actually care about their patient or their client. And it's interesting because I wonder how it's going to transition if we have this different type of person being a doctor. And granted, you'll probably still have your like egotistical surgeons because surgeons have to be confident and that's just how it is. But I'm curious if we have this new group of doctors, how the medical field or the pharmaceutical companies, all the stuff that goes into it will change over time. Because if you have a different set of doctors with a different set of beliefs and different type of people, maybe it won't be like it is.
I would argue against that. I think
Yeah.
what you're going to end up having is they're just going to be more agreeable and compassionate people, and they're just going to...
People will take their drugs more willy-nilly.
Well, no, they'll probably accept $20,000 and just the prostitutes. or the dinner, or just the dinner, right? Like they'll the less agreeable people and the people who are probably better at the STEM fields or STEM, not STEM fields, but math. Let's say the math and science thing, might be more like, no, give me some of that, give me some more of that money. You know what I mean? Which may end up getting them out of debt quicker, and then they may end up making better decisions because they are not gridlocked to the morality of, I have to provide for myself, screw everybody else.
Well, I just want to say, if I can, in this public forum, everyone's listening out there, if anybody is in the medical field, that I do really respect and appreciate the medical workers, the nurses and the doctors who have great bedside manner. And
Absolutely.
I just want to give them thanks and praise big time out there. And please keep doing what you're doing very well. I've been around, I've been around both kind of doctors. Some that were kind of cold, and they just were in and out, and you were just like cattle. You felt like. But then I've also been with some really good doctors, and I would say probably more good than bad. Mm-hmm. So I want to thank all the healthcare professionals out there who are doing a good job. And you know, I think they do have something, the good ones out there. They do have something in their personality. They want to heal. They want people to feel better. You know, they want to fix things. You know, it's part of the Hippocratic Oath. I think is what they got to take.
Do not mind.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
that was definitely something that I meant to say. Like, this isn't everybody, but the problems that, like, I see, like, there are people that are contributing it to it. But no, absolutely no disrespect to the medical field, because we need doctors, we need nurses. But
probably more.
yeah, absolutely. But they're not paid properly and they're overworked. So that's a whole nother, like...
CP, you want to get in here? We've been talking too much, buddy.
I mean, I guess I have a slightly different perspective, but I mean, transparently, my dad's a doctor, my mom's a nurse, my dad is a C-level
All right, this is
executive.
good.
This is the guy who should be here today.
Yeah, my dad's a C-level executive at a pharmaceutical company now, so I have like a very different perspective on this whole
John,
conversation.
this just got real. Hey, welcome to Brought the Fresh Controversy.
Ding ding.
I know I saw you over there kind of like itching in your
Yeah,
chair. And I was like, I
right.
cannot wait to hear what he has to say.
well.
Right, so I guess
Go on.
I come from a pretty different place with this stuff. Like, and so a couple of things have been going through my head. Like, one, to go to what Zach said about, like, doctors don't get paid until they cure the problem. Nobody would ever be an oncologist, right? So nobody would ever deal with cancer. Nobody would ever deal with, like, terminal diseases or any kind of disease that is a lifelong disease.
Or someone would, because they would be the only one to do it, because everyone else wants to
But if
go,
they don't get
there's an
paid,
easier
then-
way to get paid, and then they'll actually find a cure for some of these things.
Maybe.
Which there
You know?
probably are.
There's an opposite argument for that, like the cancer thing. It's like, well, maybe people would actually cure cancer
All right,
if they had to cure it.
All right, let's get back to ZP. I know you've been holding a lot in.
All right,
here,
you're
so
in.
go
Yeah,
ahead.
I mean, I get that perspective. Like, first off, there's no funding out there for cancer research. The people are looking into it, but like the funding that exists is for solvable problems, right? And unfortunately, what the current solution to cancer is an absurd problem. Is an absurd process. Essentially, it's like, let's put poison in your body in hopes that it kills the right stuff and not the wrong stuff, right? Looking back in 50 years on how we treat cancer today, we're gonna look like barbarians, right? But the problem is, like, there's very little research out there that is, like, really promising as far as, like, how to solve this. Because cancer, unfortunately, is one of those problems that if you live long enough, you will have cancer, right? It's just a statistical probability, right? Because all cancer is a miscopying of the way that your genes and your cells copy themselves, and then they become rampant overgrowth. Right? And there are things that contribute to that, like smoking contributes to lung cancer because it directly impacts the way that your lung cells reproduce, right? And all tumors are, which is all cancer really is just a malfunction in the way that cells are told to reproduce, and they reproduce like at a level that they're not supposed to, right? And then things grow out of hand, right? If you live long enough, statistically that's going to happen, right? So it's a problem that's basically like, how do we solve aging? Right, is the way my dad has always described it to me, right?
Yeah.
You can't, right? You can't. It's like a problem that will never solve itself, right? What we can do is think of ways to prevent that stuff from happening, right? Which is where there is no research, right? Nobody is really looking into, like, how are we, like, actually preventing this problem from ever occurring.
Because it doesn't make money.
Exactly, right? But this is from where my dad tells me, like, what they do is they... will fund
What they do.
yeah, they will fund research that will make money. So things like Viagra, other things like that are big money makers for pharmaceutical companies in order to fund this other types of research. My dad specifically is an endocrinologist and literally wrote the textbook on diabetes that is still used in medical school today, right?
Wow.
And like, he is the chief medical officer for one of the subsidiary companies for a big pharma company. Right, and one of the things that his whole career is based on is they can sell all these other products and make money there so that his research can come out there and stop, like, diabetic neuropathy, which is the destruction of your nerve endings when you have diabetes, right? How are we, like, providing a better quality of life for people who have a lifelong disease, right? Going back to what we said before, like, living with this, not being defined by it, right?
Yeah.
So I guess I come from a very different place in this conversation. I look at it and think, if they weren't out there peddling their drugs, then we wouldn't be able to afford the research that is actually creating quality of life changes for people right now, right?
Yeah.
If they weren't out there selling Viagra at the cost that they sell Viagra at, which at the end of the day, like erectile dysfunction, it sucks. Like it definitely sucks. It is not something that's going to kill you. Whereas diabetes untreated will kill you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
so at the end of the day, I don't have as much a problem with Viagra costing what it costs versus to keep insulin costs low. What I do have a problem with is when hospitals and insurance companies jack the prices up astronomically on life-saving drugs. And that's where the real costs come from, right? Because every hospital works with the insurance companies that they accept and say, these are the prices we're going to charge for one pill of Tylenol, one dose of insulin, one dose of whatever, so that both sides can make money. The pharmaceuticals are cut out of that equation, right? Because they sell these drugs at a certain cost to the hospitals, and then insurance says, this is what you need to charge every injection of insulin. That is very different from what they actually sell the drug at.
So you're blaming more of the insurance companies for the high costs?
I do, personally.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, excellent. Appreciate. We love getting all these different viewpoints and information out.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's what
Yeah.
we're all about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
It'd be real boring if we all agreed.
Yeah. Now, I mean, to dive into the cancer thing, or I mean, not dive into it, but to touch on that, I've heard that back in the late 90s or early 2000s, they were injecting a liquid-based form of vitamin C directly into tumors that cost something like 93 cents a shot or whatever. And they claimed that it shrunk the tumors like almost instantaneously.
There's a lot of
And-
research anecdotally out there about all sorts of stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
Like people will say, like, I drank 6 gallons of orange juice every day and my cancer went away. It's like, well, your cancer might have gone away if you didn't drink 6 gallons of orange juice every day.
Or they
right?
did a
Like,
keto diet.
Sure. Yeah.
What we do know is that, like, yes, there is research out there that is looking into alternative ways of treating cancer, including vitamin C, including other things. Like we know that not hepatitis, but HPV vaccine that was developed in Louisville around cancer and cervical cancer was designed with those kinds of alternative ways in mind. Like, if we can prevent people from getting the thing that causes the cancer, then the cancer doesn't need to be solved, right?
Yeah.
That's where the HPV vaccine came from, right?
Yeah.
It came from this idea that's like, we know the HPV virus causes cervical cancer. If we can prevent people from getting this, then we can prevent cancer, right?
That's really interesting, though. I did not know that there was not as a lot of research into cancer prevention as there was cancer treatment. You're saying?
Yeah, there's way more money in cancer treatment because when you have cancer, you want to live, right? And people will pay any amount of money to stay alive, right? But they don't think about
nobody. All of us who don't have cancer are not thinking we should invest in figuring out ways to not have cancer.
Yeah,
I think about that a lot. Like, what can I do not to have to go through all that? Like,
I try to eat a handful of blueberries every day.
yeah.
So I was like superfoods.
Yeah.
Well, if I eat a handful of superfoods,
That'll be good.
that'll just.
Quite honestly, I go with the route, like, if I ever have cancer, I'm not going to be diagnosed with it because I'm not going to go to the doctor to find out. Unless I fall over on, the sidewalk and they rush me to the hospital and then they tell me I have cancer. I'm like, damn it. But I'm like a mind over matter type person. Like, don't tell me I have it. If I die one day because I had cancer all over my body, like, here I go again talking about if I die. We're all going to die.
Yeah,
I
that's
don't
what
lock
Ricky
the
Gervais
doors.
said that. Ricky Gervais said that. Yeah. There isn't going to be a sequel. We're all going to die.
Yeah. Well, what you kind of said there too is very powerful. You know, the placebo effect is
Absolutely.
incredibly powerful, and I think a lot of the mysticism and some of the holistic medicine, but even some of the weird spirituality, yuppie New Agers kind of touch.
You keep saying
That's me.
you keep saying
That's
you
me.
you said yuppie twice now. I think you mean
I will always say yuppie.
I think you mean hippy dippy. I think you mean hippy dippy.
Sure, hippy dippy.
Yuppie is for young urban professionals. It got big in the '80s. This is more of a.
It's like
this is more of a corporate kind of a thing.
guy.
the guy who came in the
I
doctor's
know
office.
plenty of people
He
in
was probably
Connecticut
yuppie.
who are they're yuppies,
Oh,
but they
oh,
also
Connecticut.
do the whole yoga meditation at home, man. This is
There's
what-
definitely crossover between yuppies and hippies, but
yes.
Okay.
Anyways,
All right.
all right.
Yeah.
So hit the hippie dippy, the spiritual
Sure.
crowd, the Baha'i people, whatever, and
Kumbaya.
and
Oh.
you know, but they are touching on something there. I think they really do kind of dive into this whole placebo effect and the mind over matter stuff, and it is definitely an anomaly. I'm not gonna say I would be the last person to be like, oh, don't go to see a doctor, just sit and meditate and meditate your cancer
Yeah,
away,
no.
right? But there is something to that, and I think that might be where the future of medicine in 1,000 years could really take us, right?
Right.
Is how far can we dive into that? You know, tricking your brain to you know cure your body, right?
Well, right.
And that's a fascinating thing in general.
the whole idea behind bedside manner, right, is what you're talking about, right? People will get better faster if they have positive attitudes, right? Like there's a lot of research that backs that up, right? That don't typically get better on their own, right? But with proper medical treatment and like a will to live, you are going to get better way faster than somebody who has already given up, right? And that's the whole idea behind bedside manner initially was if our doctors are good at talking to people and they're good at medicine, they're going to be better at making sure that people have like a will to fight, right? And will to like be better and get better, right? And so your brain chemistry does dramatically impact the way that your body works.
Oh yeah.
Look at
yeah.
Patch Adams, you know, the movie that
Right.
Robin
Robin
Williams.
Williams, but that was based off of a real doctor, and he was a doctor that approached it with a sense of humor, and he got to know his patients, and I mean, it didn't. Did he get killed in that movie? No, his like girlfriend did or something. Either way, yeah, it's definitely a different way of looking at things, and I hope that like medicine takes a turn towards that. Like that's one of my hopes. If one day that medicine will be more about the person. I feel like the person gets lost oftentimes in the medical field.
And there is definitely a whole branch of medicine out there called individualized medicine, right? And it's about, specifically, it looks into the genetics of an individual and says, like, this is what you're going to need. Like, this is what you individually, as a human being, need to survive and function, right? The problem is, this is astronomically expensive,
Sure.
right? Because you have to, you have to take someone's genetics, decode it, figure out what they're likely to get, and then treat them individually for every single one of those things. But if we did that, and if we found a way to make that cheaper, that would be the way to prevent cancer, right? That would be the way to prevent all of these other diseases, because you would know what's coming down the line and able to work with someone to say, this is what you need to do to make sure that this doesn't happen, right? This is what you need to do to make sure that your individualized medicine is catered to you. Plus, if we know what the genetics of a human being are, they can develop drugs for that person to work with their system, right? Versus general drugs. Like what we're doing right now is basically dropping a nuke on cancer and hoping that it doesn't have a lot of fallout and everything else in your body. What individualized genetic treatments do is it's like a sniper approach, right? It takes a sniper gun directly to what needs to be treated, takes care of it, and gets rid of it.
Interesting.
That's preventative health
Wow.
right there.
I just want to bring up some anecdotal type things. It's so funny. We live in the United States of America, greatest country in the world, a country of plenty and all kinds of different things, and yet there's a lot of irony there. You know, our whole commercialization with food. You know, it just is, you're eating this food just for the pleasure of it, not for the sustenance necessarily or the nutrition value of it. Yeah. And yet the people who seem to live the longest on the planet, at least currently, are either the Japanese or the more Mediterranean type people. So I'm just saying this from a, just every man, just a, regular guy kind of observational type thing here. I'm obviously not a scientist or a doctor or anything like that, but seems to be very interesting. And I kind of think people should, maybe look into that a little bit. Look at more of the Mediterranean diet, have some more olive oil, garlic, and maybe, I don't know what the Japanese need more, kale. Is that it? Is that the whole secret over there? Seaweed. I mean, you got to ask yourself some of these kind of things. And like you say, most of us are going to get cancer, or most of us are going to die of that or heart disease or something. And you think, well, what do we all do? well, we eat a lot of red meat, a lot of salt, a lot of sugar.
But what is really the enemy? You'll read a study like, don't drink milk, it's terrible for you. Drink lots of milk, it's really good for you. And I mean, that goes back to like who's funding
Coffee,
this
all these
commercial.
things, yeah,
But like, for
yeah.
example, Dr. Oz. I don't know if you guys have ever seen the Dr. Oz show,
Sure,
but he like
sure.
definitely pulls into like the suburban mom who has body issues, like, try this diet or try this diet.
Try Garcinia Cambogia.
Yes, absolutely. And you'll get me on the bottle. Like, I wonder though, if I watched every single Dr. Oz episode, how many times he contradicts himself. Because there's no way that you can have a show based on basically fad like things and not like contradict yourself at all. I wonder if someone's researched that before, or like looked at Dr. Oz and
That's why he got called into
seen.
Congress,
Yeah,
right?
Dr. Oz did.
Yeah.
See, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he got pulled in front of Congress because he was lying to people, basically.
Yeah.
He's like, how many times have you said that this is like a magic cure to X? And
Right.
they were like, you're a doctor. You can't do this on national television.
Oh yeah,
right?
see, I
So-
didn't even know that happened.
Yeah.
That makes me feel better though.
Yeah.
But his show's still on, so.
Well, I think there's something to kind of what ZP said in that, like, the direct approach is the best approach, although it's incredibly costly. But there's a lot to say. There's a lot to the idea that and the truth that everyone's bodies are very different, and you do need an individualized approach at your own medicine, and everyone's genetics are very, very different. So there are some things that will work like the majority of the time, but they're not foolproof, right? Like if you consume less carbohydrates, you'll lose weight. Like that is true for probably 70% of the population, right?
Sure.
For maybe like 30% of the population, they will cut carbs out and they'll maybe lose 5 pounds over like 5 months, right? So you do have to kind of fine tune things, try things out. A lot of it is, if you don't have that tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars to pay for the direct genetic approach, you do have to do this trial and error thing, right? And you have to try these fad diets and everything. So the fact that Dr. Oz has kind of said, well, this might work, this works, it's like, well, some of that might be true, right? And there are some biological truths to things that, it's like you need protein and testosterone to build muscle, right? Like those things have to be there.
Right.
They're the building blocks for that biologically, right? Like some people don't need any carbohydrates to spike their insulin to grow that muscle.
Yeah.
Some people definitely they need so much carbohydrates with the protein and healthy protein and testosterone to grow muscle mass because their body demands it, their genetics demand it. So, I can understand where some of it might get confusing, right? It's like, Dr. Oz, you say everything's a magic fad. This all
Right.
can't really work. The truth is, it all does, just not for everybody.
Yeah,
And you got to trial and
absolutely.
error it,
It's the art of medicine, right? That's
Yeah.
why they talk about the art of medicine. It's like figuring out what works for you,
Sure.
not necessarily what works for the like John Doe down the road, right?
Yeah. This is, I guess I'll kind of dive into this part of healthcare, and this has always been my weird part about it, and this is more of a political sense. So Jay, jump in on me here if I say something wrong or anybody. My weird thing, I would rather our government give us better healthcare than to pay for all the insane wars, to be giving all this foreign aid. I don't know what the state of Israel needs $42 billion or whatever they get every year from us for, when we've got people dying of cancer and we've got diseases that need research and need treatment, all that kind of stuff, right? I would much rather see $42 billion or whatever the hell, instead of going to the state of Israel, it goes to the cancer prevention, right? Like that would be a great turning point in how our taxes are used, right? We're $20 trillion in debt. We should have a goddamn utopia. Not only on healthcare, but on everything else. Okay, you give me a country and you give me $20 trillion, okay, and you give me a country that's got Jay-Z and Beyonce, right, and $20 trillion, I will give you a utopia. Okay, we have shit. Okay, like I know this is the greatest country and all that kind of stuff, but considering what we've put into this as a people, all that money, man, we need something better. We deserve something better. Okay. And so, I want to say that on the political spectrum, it's like I'm pro healthcare to a point. I think we should try to tackle a national debt before you really get into, let's give everybody free everything. It's like, well, I don't know about that. But my big issue about any sort of government-run healthcare, besides all the regular stupid things you hear about, like, well, government's not going to run it properly. Government can't run anything properly. Blah, 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 blah. They run the military great.
Right.
Okay? They run the military fine. Okay?
Well,
so they can do things.
Pentagon's never been audited, son, so I don't know about that. I don't know if it really runs it great. You were talking about
By comparison,
and
far and
money and
large,
things
we
like
would
that.
cream everybody. We could probably wreck most aliens out there. Okay?
I mean, this is a big conversation. I don't want to go down some rabbit hole, but the point is that government usually screws stuff up. It usually creates bureaucracies it doesn't need. However, I guess, I mean, to go the other way, okay, on your side for a second, there has been a lot of R&D money over the years that has produced things. Ironically, it's usually connected to military things, and then that stuff all then trickles down to the consumerism, which is like the computers and everybody's crazy on their phone. Obviously, these things existed a long time ago. Steve Jobs didn't make this shit up. I don't think anybody really wants to talk about it. But CIA spies probably had this shit way before anybody else, and then eventually it goes public. The internet was a Pentagon thing, and then eventually they started to make it a public thing, and then all these businesses have come in through the internet. So some R&D stuff, does trickle down, does get into the economy, does change, our modern day lives. So there is something to it, but I mean, it's going to be a complicated thing. I mean, I guess like when people like Bernie, who is currently the leader on the Democrat side of the primary system. I don't know when people will be listening to this, but that's the current scorecard right now. I mean, when he talks about free college, I mean, if anybody ever did anything like that, I mean, shouldn't it make sense to do maybe free college for medical? Maybe we just need more doctors, instead of these guys being strapped with so much debt. Some way to at least, if it's not free, but at least minimize or help with certain fields that we need more of as a society, as a country. That overall, in the long term, is going to help society. That would be more true progressivism. So I would say that to my left-wing brothers and sisters out there. I rip on them over various issues, but if they would more articulate that and more fine-tune it, it might make a little more sense. It might get more people on board.
Definitely. My main point, I want to touch on that just because that's a common thing conservatives and right-wingers kind of throw. The government's not going to run it right, blah, blah, blah. It's like, that's not even my point. I want to come at it from a completely different angle, and that is when you're talking about paying for everyone's healthcare, right, and you're kind of paying for everyone's medical treatment, all that kind of stuff, the vast majority of it, everyone always kind of runs to like the astronomical, oh, you're helping that kid with cancer. You're helping the kid with leukemia. And it's like, when you look at the actual costs of most healthcare, maybe less than 10% of that is going to be these really extreme cases that like deserve charity, deserve, whatever. They really are, where they rolled the wrong dice. They got a shit roll on life, and they were born with these things that, they're stuck in a wheelchair for the rest of their life, and their brain is scrambled on one side, or what have you, right? They really do deserve and need this kind of stuff. And those are the people that we often think of. But, not something like 90% of all healthcare costs are things like really super basic. Mm-hmm. Or they're things that cover bad healthcare practice, like the person that's chain smoking their whole goddamn life, and then they get lung cancer. They're like, "Oh my god, the healthcare costs so much. Oh my god, I can't afford this." It's like, but you afforded every pack of cigarettes every year for the last 20 plus years, right? So now what? The taxpayer has to sit there and go, well, because you fucked up and you made this choice in your life, right? We're not going to let natural selection take care of you. We have to then coddle you and make sure you put these terrible barbaric practices that are super expensive, right? And that's what I have to pay for. I have to pay for all the times you had 5 McRibs from McDonald's and those French fries and everything, and now you're dying of heart disease and you're 360 pounds obese, and you can barely get out of your bed. I don't think people understand that. The majority of healthcare costs are not these anomalies that deserve charities and they deserve your sympathy, right, or your empathy, right? it's 90% of it are people who are not living healthy lives themselves.
Right.
And then giving them something like free healthcare allows them to have their cake and eat it too, right? It allows them to live their crappy health lifestyles and then have no consequence for it because they can just go to the doctor and get more help than they had or get it for free or what have you. And then they're just going to continue to go to McDonald's and continue to chain smoke and continue whatever, right? And so that's where I come at it where it's like, well, there's a big issue with, and I'm going to come back to this issue in a lot of things, is like there's the accountability, right? And the responsibility for your life, right? And your health, no one's going to care about your health more than you, okay?
Right.
So if you're serious about this kind of stuff, like you really got to take your life in your own hands. And sometimes, I'm not saying all the time, again, it's probably something like 10% of the time, your abnormal health problems are not your fault. But 9 times out of 10, on a population level, they are absolutely a byproduct of bad habits and poor behavior.
But it's huge that there's a lack in education for it too.
That's a big thing.
Yeah.
But compared to what?
If you look at, like, say, in the inner city, say, for
Like food
example, like the
deserts and stuff,
African American race, I don't know.
Sure.
Yeah,
There
I
you
don't
go.
know. I just
There you
totally had
go.
a brain fart. I'm
Yeah,
like,
you're fine. Okay.
yeah, there's a lack of education. And there's a lot of people. This will go back to your sexual arena theory, not having the dads in the home, not having the moms. And over time, just not learning how to eat properly, not learning
Well, yeah.
how to cook properly.
And food
and
deserts definitely exist in the country too.
what's that?
Like food deserts definitely exist all over the country, especially
Yeah.
in urban areas, like
Yeah.
areas where like you have
Urban
to drive,
areas, that's good.
You have to drive multiple miles to get to somewhere just to get fresh produce, and that fresh
Sure.
produce costs 3 times as much as a box of fries at McDonald's.
Absolutely.
Right, and if you don't know what to do with kale, all of a sudden you own like a bunch of kale, and you're like, well, what am I doing with this?
Goes in the
Right, like
garbage,
to your
yeah.
point.
I don't know.
Or you
I completely disagree. Eggs are like one of the healthiest things you could eat, and they're one of the cheapest.
You can, but you
Okay.
have to be
I'm-
educated on how to feed yourself properly.
We have Google. They didn't have that 40 years ago. They didn't have that 100 years ago.
But
They
something
didn't have that
that's so
400 years
simple
ago.
for you isn't so simple for everybody else.
I think
Not
everybody knows how
people-
to use Google.
Yeah, but they aren't
And they didn't
gonna
have.
think
They didn't
like,
have. They didn't have that. So even if they don't have the
That's a good
parents,
point.
even if they don't have the parents, we have Google now. You can go to your public library if you don't have a phone. If you don't have a phone, what planet are you living on? Not Earth.
Sure.
Okay. Not even the poorest people you can find in the streets of Chicago. They got a cell phone. Okay, and they got
Right.
Wi-Fi and they got internet. So when you say when you say stuff like like this is like the worst time for this and that, it's like. I don't know if I agree with that, even though I do think that there are people who it's not a level playing field, right? There's not a level playing field, and not everyone has the same parents, the same opportunities, the same amount of education, right? Or born with the same IQ, okay? But everybody's got Google at their fingertips now, and that is something that you have. It's like you have a doctor or something a lot smarter than you at your fingertips at all times.
I mean, some of it I think is like you don't know what you don't know, right?
Yeah.
Like, and so to your point about like, I don't think everyone should have every single test and every single procedure paid for by the government, right? But there are Democratic candidates out there running for president who believe that like preventative health care should be paid for, right? Like things like a annual checkup, like that looks into making sure that you don't get cancer and teaches you all like what to do and what to eat and how to get there and all that kind of stuff. It gives you that information. It's like, here's like some stuff to go home and Google and learn, right? And learn how to cook kale and learn how to use lettuce and like learn how great eggs are for you, right? But if you don't know to look that stuff up, you don't know to
You
look
don't
that
do
stuff
it,
up,
right.
right?
That would be somebody should do that. Someone really should advocate for that. That would be huge, I think, in the Trumpian terms. That would be huge to give that to everybody, right? Take that and go, okay, for the 360 million people in the U.S., we're gonna give you all 10 grand, right? So it's gonna cost us $3.6 billion in tax revenue, and everyone's gonna be given that education. Everyone's going to be allowed to go to a doctor for however long it is, a month, 2 months, 3 months. They're going to get all the blood work. They're going to get all the genetics decoding tests, all that kind of stuff. Here's a pamphlet of information going, these are healthy foods you should eat. These are the foods that would help with these things that are probably going to affect you sometime in the future based on your genetics,
Yeah.
right? Here you go. And then if they decide to chain smoke cigarettes, right, and it says on their notes like don't chain smoke cigarettes, right? If it says
I would hope
if it says-
everybody says
if it says in their genetics decoding like avoid red meat at all costs, and you're just gonna sit and pound a steak every week, it's like
When you get colon cancer,
Then
don't
you
come
get-
back and complain,
exactly
right?
exactly. Then you got to pay out of your pocket. But let's do the free preventative,
Sure.
health measure. That would be awesome. That would be awesome. I think.
And there is, like I said, like Tom Steyer and Michael Bloomberg come to mind immediately. They're all about like Medicare for some things, right? Like giving everyone an annual checkup is like a very reasonable thing that will actually genuinely reduce the cost of Medicare, like medical costs in this country. Because if we, like colon cancer, I made a joke about it just a minute ago, but very preventable if you catch it early, right? Like something that's incredibly simple to get rid of and but cost millions of dollars if you don't, right? Because it spreads rapidly throughout the body, right? And obviously, like, don't smoke, right? Because smoking causes cancer, right? But that kind of stuff everyone knows. Like, not everyone knows that red meat does directly lead to colon cancer. And if you're having a steak every single day, you're increasing your chances of getting colon cancer because red meat is hard to process, and anything that makes your cells in your colon work harder means that they're reproducing faster, which means that you're having a higher likelihood of developing polyps which develop into tumors, right? And so like all of that stuff, there are people out there advocating for this like preventative medication. Like preventative medicine is what keeps our costs down, and that's what my dad has said my whole life. Like the best way to prevent getting sick is to prevent getting sick, right? Like don't
So tune in for our podcast. We'll get ZP on here with more health education services and PSAs. And for those of you that don't have the proper resources and education, I was kidding. Yeah, no, seriously, I think that would be huge.
What about if foods? So this has been a big topic amongst people is the food stamp card and how people can buy soda and chips and things that aren't going to properly nourish your body.
See, that's not progressive. So that's what I'm talking about to the American left when they just do stupid shit like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not progressive, and these people on the left, they need to wake up to that. Okay, that's not.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, why don't they have, like, here, if you need this food stamp card to feed yourself, your family, whatever, why isn't there a class that goes along with this card? If you want this card, you come to this class, and I'm going to teach you how to properly cook and shop and eat.
Yeah.
This
Like,
is
something that looks so simple to me. And maybe it's not that simple, but, like, why are you letting people buy soda with a fucking food stamp card?
that shouldn't
right.
be. Yeah, that shouldn't be allowed.
Like, we know that sugar feeds cancer cells. Like, we know sugar does not benefit you.
Yeah, and some of that also comes back to, like, the soda lobbying, right? For them to say, like, put that kind of stuff on, like, federal government, federal-run programs to say, like, well, you can't buy soda with this. Then the lobbyists will come in and be like, whoa, hold on. Stop, slow your roll. Like, which is unfortunate, right? That's an unfortunate reality of the politics today.
Yeah, this $200,000
yeah.
check here says otherwise.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
keep the soda on that list.
Yeah,
Right.
people should look who owns into the big soda companies, and they'd be be pretty surprised.
Yeah, they all just sit around and circle jerk. That's what I'm determined. They're all...
And what I want to just
well, yeah.
I want to throw out here anecdotally also. Again, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a licensed nutritionist or anything like that. But, and guys, help me out here if I'm using the wrong terms. But high fructose
Corn syrup.
corn syrup. I mean, I would love to see
Tastes so good.
when did this start to come in and get in more and more of our products, and then where did the obesity rates and cancer rates go? It'd be
70s,
interesting to look at some of those charts of something like that. I mean, people want to look for quick fixes. I mean, maybe that should be outlawed. Maybe we should get back to a better relationship with Cuba or wherever. Give us the pure cane sugar, and if you're going to eat sugar, at least eat pure cane sugar. I'm not saying that's good for you, but this high fructose stuff.
Quit
some
fixing
of it
quick
is-
food. That's
Yeah.
a huge...
That's it. Like, some of it comes back to the 70s and 80s, like, there was a real push against sugar, right? Like, and sugar, as bad as sugar is for you, is way better for you than high fructose corn syrup, right? And so then companies that make soda and other types of food, like, because high fructose corn syrup is a lot of stuff, more than just soda, they replaced the sugar that was in that stuff with high fructose corn syrup, and it's like, well, it's corn, it's good for you, right? And sold it to the FDA under this idea that's like, well, it's corn, right? And so it's classified differently than sugar now because of that, right? And so it's easier to get it into more and more stuff because it's not sugar, right?
And this is where, and especially in this forum, I want people to know, there's going to be people on here, especially myself. This is Jay speaking, who's going to rip on Republicans like they've never been ripped on before. People like me are going to rip on Democrats like they've never been ripped before. You will be offended when you come here. However, this topic we're talking about right now, this is something I look at and think, well, everybody, I don't care if you're, what you call yourself, again, Democrat, Republican, Independent, this is something everybody should say, hey, yeah. And maybe we all need to look at the Food and Drug Administration a little more of a critical eye. Maybe they need to be completely audited.
I would agree.
That's why Ron Paul was like the last hope of America.
Yeah.
He was just like, let's audit everything and get rid of half these things that we don't even need. And hit the restart button and stop spending all this money.
Yeah.
How'd that work out for him?
It's like, he got silenced real fast.
Oh.
Well, right. Like, the more money there is in politics, the easier it is to buy whatever you want as far as, like, political gain, right? And that wasn't always the case, right? But it's become more and more the case, I would say, definitely recently. And then the more you can buy political influence, the more likely it is that things like the program you are talking about won't exist, right? Like, the more big soda and big sugar and corn manufacturers are in the pocket of lobbyists or in the pocket of our politicians, the less likely they are to put stipulations on, well, you can't buy corn chips and you can't buy soda with your food stamps, right? Which then dramatically increases our medical costs because we know those things directly lead to type 2 diabetes, which is a thing that you live with the rest of your life, right? Part of me wants to be like, well, my dad gets paid off people who get that, so... but a larger part of me is like, my dad has said my entire life, I want to work myself out of a job, right? I want to work to find a world where they don't need me anymore, right? And I want to work in a world where, like, type 2 diabetes doesn't exist anymore because I've worked myself out of a job, right? It sucks to have to think about it that way, but until we start dissecting all of these intersections that come into play, the less we won't get to that place, right? Like, until we start removing high fructose corn syrup and we start removing all these things that, like, add to the obesity levels in this country by saying, like, I don't care if you give me $200,000, I don't care if you give me $500,000, like, this is bad for the health of my constituents, I'm going to vote against it, right?
Yeah. We need more Ron Pauls and Bernie Sanders and William Wallace's in our government doing the right thing.
Absolutely, and I just want to say to everybody listening, and this is a hard one because you feel beat down by life or you get pulled in this direction and that direction, but we all have free will, and I think we all forget our own personal empowerment. And whether we're talking about you should go out and vote, a lot of people don't even vote, or when you make that decision, you see that commercial, it's sucking you into that to go to that fast food place. I mean, fast food I think originally was designed to be a treat. It's not like a lifestyle of an everyday thing, but it really has become that. There's so many fast food places out there, and it's they might be boring, but fruits and vegetables is probably what we need to be. All of us need to be eating more of out there, and everybody needs to probably drink more water. Folks with diabetes or worried about diabetes, get some cinnamon in your system. I mean, I'm not telling you to go off your meds. Stay on your meds, but get some cinnamon in your system. And then the big healthcare thing people don't want to talk about is, it's all about your back, baby. It's all about your lower back. I mean, this is like one of the huge things. For years, there's been all this controversy between the chiropractic world, which is more closer to the holistic healing, and people would thought they were a bunch of quacks, and then the regular doctors who will have you do some therapy, give you some medication for your back pain, and then ultimately, if it doesn't get better, they'll want to cut you, okay, and they want to do surgery. And now I would say there's been some progress made, and the two worlds are kind of coming together a little bit better, and that's a really important thing. But if you're tall, if you're overweight, and obviously other people are going to be susceptible as well. But you're definitely, if you're tall, definitely if you're overweight,
You're sitting in an office too long.
and you're sitting too long, which we're doing right now, and I'm all of those things. I'm not really tall, but I'm overweight, and yeah. And so anyway, yeah, we got to deal with these things. And the average person, you're probably gonna have to get on the floor and do some basic exercises. I personally am one of those people. And I've had the back go out several times, and you know what? The wolf is probably going to always be at the door till the day I die.
The Wolf of Wall Street?
No, no, not that lousy, crummy movie. And Marty, I love you, Mr. Scorsese, but we all can't bat 1,000, right? So I didn't like that movie. For those who. Anyway, but yeah, take care of your lower back, and again, for us people that are taller, and especially if you're overweight as well, you're gonna have to get on the floor, do some basic exercises to keep that back functioning, because otherwise, eventually, you're gonna have problems. So you got to take the bull by the horns a little bit, people. I hope some of that message has come through here today. We've talked about a lot of controversial things in the healthcare industry. It's not going to go away. The controversies are going to continue. I don't know if politicians have all the answers. I don't think so. Hopefully they can come up with some, maybe, or better than they have been. So, ZP, it's great to hear from you. Wow, you've got a lot of perspective here, a lot of background, and you too, Sarah, as well. A lot of hands-on. Sarah, and I don't even know you, very well. You seem like you probably were very good in that world, or are good in that world. I'm not sure what you're doing right now for a living,
I was awesome at it.
But yeah. you seem like you're a person who have a great bedside manner. And again, I
But you want to know? Here's the thing. You want to know what's really funny? I don't have. I don't know what you just did, but I'm going to ignore you. I went to school with a lot of people who were very, type A and would freak out, and they weren't people like me. Okay, and I'm very, I can talk to anybody, and it's typically not an issue. So I got through school because I'm not saying, I didn't learn the knowledge, but you learn the basics, you ignore the fluff. And if you can go in and you can have someone feel like you're their friend, or that you actually are there to support them, that's the best therapy that somebody can have. Yeah. It doesn't matter if you know every textbook back and forth. If you don't know people, you're just not going to succeed as well.
So true.
Yeah.
So true. All right. Well, any closing remarks before we wrap this up?
I don't think so.
We will probably revisit this topic again.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Thank
There's
you
a
so
lot.
much to ZP, and thank you so much to Sarah for your insights today.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you again.